When a loved one is sick, the days are long, but the years are short. Welcome to AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks with your hosts, me, Ramia Amuthan, and Jacob Szymanski.
Hello.
Also, Nisreen Abdel-Majid. Hello. Nisreen Abdel-Majid is here. She is our technical producer. We got a lot going on today. As usual, we've split the pod into two sections. On the first part, we're talking about multi-voice narration audiobooks. Apparently, there's a bit of a controversy. I don't know, differences of opinions that go on about multi-voice narration audiobooks.
Strong opinions, at the very least.
Yeah, strong opinions. Yeah, definitely. We're talking, audio dramas. If they're done well, they're good. If they're done badly, they can be a disjointed mess of cringe. That's what the haters say. So Sarah Hillis, who joins us monthly on the show, is going to talk about that. Also, in the second half, we're talking to Natasha Peters. She's an avid audiobook worm / listener, and she's going to do rapid fire review with us because we just never not do that anymore.
No,
New
we can't
people?
not.
Yeah.
It's the
New
best.
people have to do rapid
and people
fire.
love it.
Yeah.
All the feedback we get, people love
Exactly.
it. We're going to keep
I swear
doing
people come on the show and they're like, are you going to put me through the rapid fire review pressure? Are you? I really want it. So, yeah. So anyways, I'll give you a glance at the Sela homepage as well later. But for now, let's bring on Sarah Hillis. Sarah, we do Know Your Narrator with you. We're doing a lot more with you nowadays. And today you want to talk about multi-voice narration. So obviously I did a bad job off the top talking about exactly what it is. Why don't you tell us?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about two different things, which I've just made up the terms because I needed to differentiate them in my brain. So there's multi-voice narration, which in my mind means different narrators, say, narrating different points of view or different chapters or different stories in a novel. So it's still a narrated novel, absolutely, but there are just more than one person doing it. Full cast narrated novels are the ones that I have issues with, and we'll talk about this, because they're narrated usually by a single narrator all the way through. That's great, but then there's all this like acting and sound effects in the middle of it, and my problem has often been that I don't know, is this a drama? Is this a novel? Should I be even worrying about it? Maybe I should just go with the flow.
Right.
But yeah, so I just want to kind of talk about this. I have really no facts to present other than some books I'll mention. But it was just kind of something that's been on my mind for a while, and I wanted to discuss it with you guys.
Okay, so let's be clear. Like, where do you stand on this? It sounds like you have mixed feelings. Do you, like where do you stand on this?
Multi-voice narration, where several narrators narrate different bits of a book, is really great in many ways because it can help illuminate the book, especially if it's really complicated and there are lots of points of view that need to be differentiated really well. In a text, you might have them in different fonts, for example, but we don't have that visual clue. So sometimes having different narrators can bring out the main characters in an interesting way, like in a book like The Help by Catherine Stockett. Some of the people from the movie were involved in narrating the book, and in the version I read anyway, and it was really, really nice to hear those different voices, because it's about Black women and a white woman living in the South in the 60s kind of thing, and very different ways of life, right, at that time. And so those four different narrators really brought it out well. That helped, I think. My problem comes when you have there's even a third category, which is Dune. That's not the third category because it's weird.
It's its own category.
It's the Renaissance audio production of Dune. At least the first book. I think the second and third they got a little more wise about it, but in the first book for sure, they tried to do a main narrator with some sort of dramatized dialogue, but it was not done consistently. So you had one scene which was dramatized, and the next scene with the very same characters was not dramatized.
Right.
And I was like, were the people not available? Like, what was going on? Like, I don't know why they did it that way.
I read that one too. I think you're being kind to it. I literally think it was god awful. It really was terrible.
I do too.
Because like the first 2 or 3 chapters, they were really cool. Like it was like an almost full cast thing, and they had like subtle sound effects, which I'm totally okay with.
Yeah.
Like I remember, like the opening was supposed to take place on like I forget where it was, but there were like these like bleep bloop sounds of what sounded like a spaceship humming along, you know?
Yeah.
And it was cool. I was like, all right, I'm in a sci-fi mood. And then suddenly all the sound effects are gone. It's just a straight read. And you're like, what happened? They lost the budget after 3 chapters.
Yeah, very strange. So, and it's interesting. We actually have a sample from Graphic Audio, and they're an interesting case where I've always been sort of annoyed with them, except I shouldn't be. I am. But like I love how they do their stuff, but for me it's like, okay, the drama's so cool. Can you just stop narrating for 1 minute and let it be a drama? But that's not what they're trying to do. It's just me that doesn't like it. Graphic Audio is great.
And they're very popular too. For those who
are.
don't know, Graphic Audio is a company that does audiobooks, but they're fully produced, full cast productions of usually fantasy and sci-fi books. Is that right, Sarah?
Yeah, and they started anyway for sure as doing audio versions of graphic novels.
Right.
We can't read those graphic novels well, ourselves as blind people. So it's really cool to get these things done. My thing is, their slogan is a movie in your mind, and it's like, no, it's not a movie because there's like 3 hours of narration and then maybe some drama. I'm exaggerating, but
no,
they're a great company. It's just me. I don't know why I hate it so much.
They do something very unique that it's not for everyone, but the people who like it absolutely love it.
They do.
Their thing is having like very extensive and pretty amazing sound design when it comes to like sound effects and atmospheres and stuff like that. Let's give you an idea. This is a clip from The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, the graphic audio version.
Dalinar, come here. Sadeas tells me he has won 3 gem hearts in the last few weeks alone.
He has indeed.
How many have you won?
Including the one today?
No, before this.
None, Your Majesty.
It's Sadeas's bridges. They're more efficient than yours.
I may not have won anything the last few weeks, but my army has won its share of skirmishes in the past. And the gem heart can go to damnation for all I care.
Perhaps. But what have you done lately?
I have been busy with other important things.
Sadeas raised an eyebrow.
More important than the war? More important than vengeance? Is that possible? Or are you just making excuses?
Dalinar gave the other High Prince a pointed look. Sadeas just shrugged. They were allies, but they were not friends. Not any longer.
You should switch to bridges like his.
Your Majesty, Sadeas's bridges waste many lives.
But they are also fast. Relying on wheeled bridges is foolish, Dalinar. Getting them over this plateau terrain is slow and plodding.
The codes state that a general may not ask a man to do anything he would not do himself. Tell me, Sadeas, would you run at the front of those bridges you use?
I wouldn't eat gruel either, or cut ditches.
But you might if you had to. The bridges are different. Stormfather, you don't even let them use armor or shields. Would you enter combat without your plate?
The bridgemen serve a very important function. They distract the Parshendi from firing at my soldiers.
One thing I find notable about this type of production is the way they handle dialogue tags, which I find kind of goofy. Like, it's a bit of an issue I have with it, where it's going to be 2 actors playing 2 different characters, and then randomly there's going to be...
Said.
another random voice come in and just say, he said. It's really goofy.
And that's the part that bugs me, is like, the door opens suddenly. Cha-ching! And it's like, okay, you just had to put the sound effect. You didn't have to say the door opened suddenly.
Yeah, he unsheathed his sword.
Which it's wrong, but anyway, that's the lovely sound effect. Yeah, so but no, graphic audio.
But would you want these
great.
things described if it was a TV show? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different question marks here, right? If this was AD, audio description, for something that included visual aspects on screen, just because the sound effects are there, we wouldn't necessarily settle for not hearing the description of what's going on, right? But then I wanted to bring up Kelly McDonald in here because he's said a lot about this particular aspect of radio, old-time radio, right? Old-time radio back in the day, OTR never really included this kind of stuff. You didn't need to. It was just made for radio. So people knew what sounds they were hearing. There was no third person in the background just being like, FYI, that was a door opening. So is this the problem? You know what I mean? Like, is this the problem we're having where we're like, don't do this because it's cringe, because we should already know what's going on. This is an all audio thing.
So are you saying that it's just like redundant information to
Isn't
have
it? Isn't
the
that what
sound
you guys are
effect?
pointing out?
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
It can be.
I think we're being haters right now.
But at the same
obviously.
time,
But what I'm saying is it's done before. It's been done before where people did not narrate, did not tell you even dialogue tags, right? Like you just assumed the listener knew.
But because graphic audio is adapting an actual book, like into this thing, it's trying to use the sound effects in place of the pictures, right? That's what it's trying to do. So if you think about that, like in graphic novels, as far as I understand, there are the pictures, artwork, I suppose one can say, and there's also some little bits of narration in there, as far as I understand it. I've never experienced a graphic novel, obviously, but so that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take something like that, and that's the first premise of when they started, was to try to render graphic novels into sound. So if I look at it that way, I don't hate it so much. It's just that when it's neither fish nor fowl, it kind of bothers me. Is it a drama or is it a book? Tell me what it is.
Well, you use the word efficiency. Is that something we want out of our books? Like, we spend 40 hours with some of these books. Like, I don't think efficiency is something that's top of mind. So to have like a sound effect accompanying every description isn't necessarily a bad thing. It could just put you more into the scene, right? Like in the clip that we listened, get rid of the description.
Yeah,
she's on that.
I think it's a different product altogether. Like I really do think, you know, it's not necessarily a word for word translation. It cannot be possible to take a book, whether or not it has visuals, right? Like we're talking graphic novels or just anything, you know, made into an audio drama, pick your choice, and say, we got to translate this book. It's just not the same way. Like there's got to be creative liberty. And that includes making the decision not to add dialogue tags or not to have the redundancy of a sound effect and a description because we're like, hello, this is made for an audio experience. It's just a completely different experience, period.
From what I understand, graphic audio does do that. They do remove some dialogue tags, but not all of them.
As they should. Well, why not all?
So I have, like, when I first get into a graphic audio thing, it's my husband that usually lets us listen to these, and I go, oh, it's going to be one of these again. But then once I get into it, I kind of like, okay, I'm good with it now. But for the first little while, I'm like, really, so much narration, and the lovely acting is so good, and the sound is so good, and then there's this narrative voice that's just doing things, and sometimes I feel like it distracts me from the drama, but then once I get into it, it's fine. But for the first little while,
is it our problem?
It's my problem.
We just need to
like,
I think it's the three of us
problem.
around the table. Yeah,
because everybody loves graphic audios. Everybody's like cool with it. They love
they're
it.
good.
They're very
no,
popular,
no.
yeah.
Production value for graphic audio products are incredible. Incredible. We know that. This is not just, you know, they're not skating by on anything. They put in all the resources and all the work. It's just more approach is what I'm very curious about, people's opinions.
Another thing I find kind of strange about graphic audio novels is when characters have internal dialogue or internal monologue, they put like a little reverb effect to indicate that. I don't know if you guys noticed that. So it's
that's
not
done
the
so
narrator.
much, though, like
It's-
on TV and stuff.
Yes, that's like a movie thing. It reminds me of The Simpsons sometimes.
Yeah.
I was gonna
Sometimes
say,
they
yeah.
do, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just do the really close mic thing.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So it just depends on what you're listening to, but which is great. I mean, I like that one. I like that sort of intimacy of now it's a closer mic, and it's like, I'm talking in my thoughts, and you know that, and it's cool.
I think it's important to note the graphic audio is multi-voice narration, full cast audiobooks taken to the extreme.
It really
there
is,
a middle ground in like duets, right, Sarah?
Yeah, there's dual narration. Apparently, I haven't read any of these, but in romance, it's a thing to do dual narration. That's featured in Julia Whalen's "Thank You for Listening" book.
Yeah,
in a funny way, but yeah, and other kinds of middle grounds. Good Omens by Neil Gaiman, the latest version. Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. It's got a narrator and it's got actors, and it's got a little bit of sound effect, but it's not ridiculous. And it's fun. Like, I enjoy it. It's fun. The one I had a real problem with for myself was Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials series, which Philip Pullman narrated.
Okay.
He did okay with the narration, but then there was and the acting was really good, but it was just one of these like, is it a book? Am I missing any part of the book? Did they abridge it? I don't think they did, but did they abridge it? I don't know. Like, I had all these anxieties about it. I just wanted to read the book.
So what's an example of a book you think did multi-voice narration well?
Well, for multi-voice, again, I would pick The Help by Catherine Stockett.
Right.
For the full cast thing, again, I think Good Omens is a good choice from, was it 2018? I think maybe. There's lots of examples out there, I'm quite sure, that are great. It's interesting, why is it becoming more popular to do, I guess? Is it just that people really want it done? Another really good book was Lincoln in the Bardo by George Saunders. It's got a ton of different characters. It takes place in a graveyard, and there's a bunch of dead people talking. It's really
creepy.
Weird. It's not really creepy. It's just weird. Very sort of literary, I guess. And it has all these people doing the different chapters from the different people's point of view, and you need that because it's like it gets very confusing if you don't have it. Yeah, so that was good. Short story books, different people reading different stories. Like Stephen King has an awful lot. Most of them are cobbled together from old cassettes, and that's why they're different. But some of his short story collections have different people reading different short stories, or novellas. They're not really short stories. So they work pretty well. I'm happy with those.
I've seen duet or duo narrations be implemented in different ways. In the Wheel of Time series narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, they separate it along gender lines. So there's literally like dozens of point of views in that series, but every time it's a male character, Michael does it and Kate does the female characters. And it just works out that it's pretty much 50-50. That it works out well, but one thing that ends up being a little strange is that they will end up voicing the same characters. Because, for example, if Michael voices character A and Kate voices character B, eventually character A and character B are going to interact in the story, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Kate ends up voicing a character that Michael's been doing for most of the book, and it just ends up being a bit jarring. You're like, oh, that's not what he sounds like. Oh, I wasn't used to that.
Yeah, I haven't listened to those versions because I started with the Rosamund Pike new ones.
Oh, okay.
And that's it's a single narration, which is done very well, but it's a lot of work. I mean, they're huge books, and I thought it was interesting that they did have dual narration for those books, because a lot of those fantasy books, they don't do that. Nobody does that.
No, that's a very unique thing between Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. They always work together.
Yeah.
It's a married couple that almost always does their books together. It's kind of their thing.
Isn't it also just a newer trending thing to have duo and multi-narration and give people, not even just in the narration side, but in the writing side? I'm finding like a lot of YA and other more popular genres, thrillers and such, that are getting a lot more chapters written in different perspectives, like different POV, and then you get that with the narration then.
Well,
obviously.
With the rise of audiobooks, I can only imagine that authors are more cognizant that their books are going to be made into audiobooks, and certain books lend themselves much better to multi-voice narrations. And Like, for example, I read a book, One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. That book has 4 different point of views, so 4 different narrators, which the book was meh, but the narration was fantastic because the book lent itself very well to that because they were strict point of views. Like a lot of like unreliable narrator type stuff too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
very
Cool.
like it was easy to characterize the different people.
Yeah, no, I find it interesting, and I find it interesting about like remote work and stuff. Like, how many people actually get together in a room anymore and do it? Like, probably not that many, right? Because there's you just take it all to the studio and mix it or whatever. But
Right.
what is the collaboration process like? Like, it can be a lot or it can be a very little. Like, you do this and that's what we want you to do. Okay, I'll do that. And and nobody talks to each other, but sometimes they do, and then it's really great because they collaborate, and that's cool.
I wanted to shout out Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. That book wasn't necessarily a multi-voice narration, but there was some really clever sound design. So in that book, there's like basically 2 characters. There's a main scientist character on a spaceship and like an alien. And for about the first half of the book, he can't translate or interpret what the alien is telling him. So they use like some really clever sound design to represent the alien's dialogue, which is unintelligible. It's just these weird, like, they kind of sound like distorted strings. They're like a little electrified. It's really strange. But once and it's very expressive too. Sometimes they sound angry. Sometimes they sound like they're laughing. It's really cool. And when he finally does manage to find a way to interpret what the alien is saying, it mixes the narrator's voice with those sound effects, like behind the voice, like at the same time.
Yeah.
They blend the 2 together and it sounds so cool. I thought it was a brilliant way to represent that.
Did it seem like it would work? Like, was there a time, a transition where you had to get used to that, or did it just work so well?
It just worked. It just worked perfectly. That was a book that lent itself very well to an audiobook as well. I think they're making it into a movie.
I mean, I think this multi-voice thing is getting a little out of hand, though, because there are a couple books where it takes 5 minutes to go through the credits of who's narrating these books.
Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous.
But again, are we being savage by saying that? Because, obviously people are putting in the work because this not genre, but like this platform lends itself, audiobooks and such, and audio experiences lend themselves so well.
Yeah, in the case of the 1619 project, I think there were a lot of people that wanted to be a part of it, and partly that's the problem with Dune. That's the thing with Dune too. I think that especially Scott Brick, for example, who's a total Dune head, wanted to be in Dune, and so they thought they'd do this, this fan thing, that the fans are gonna do, and then it didn't work for some reason. And I still don't know why. I've never read up why it didn't work the way it should have.
Oh, interesting. They must have thought it was just not good. Just not good enough.
I don't know.
That's so funny.
Just because you could doesn't mean you should, I guess.
Yeah. I think it's a promotion thing, too. To be able to say that it's a multicast narration. And you see that on Audible, too. Like, there's a tag for
there's
it.
There's lots of anniversary editions. Oh, it's the full cast or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Right. If there's a popular book, it's common to like redo it in a full cast, and it's kind of like the modernized version. So people are always going to go for that one instead, right? And they can charge more for it, cynically.
Yeah.
Now, especially with very popular productions, you can find like the straight voice narration, the adaptation of an audio drama, the multicast narration, then you got the TV shows and the movies and the 50,000 other adaptations for screen. Like, if something is big enough, it will go through all the ways, right? All the approaches, which I kind of think we're just going to get more and more of that as time goes.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like how video games are always re-releasing themselves. They're like, oh, now it's available on PC. Now it's available on PS5. Oh, remaster for the new Xbox. Oh, remaster for the Wii,
Somebody made a cameo and now it's re-released again. Like, there's just so much that could be done with it. It is overwhelming, I think.
I think it takes a producer with good judgment to be able to say, like, no, I think a single narrator is going to serve this book better. No, I think this series could lend itself well to 2 or 3 voices, or maybe even a full cast recording. Like, I'm not against them. It's not my thing. I'm not gonna lie, it's not my thing. But I do want to shout out one book, one series actually. The Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson was a very well produced audiobook series, very tastefully done too, because it is mostly a single narrator, but during the book they consistently get like bits of audio recordings to investigate and listen to and analyze, and those audio recordings are fully produced. So it's like an audio clip within the book is actually fully produced for us with multiple actors.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought it was really neat. So it's a nice way to up the production value, but to not overdo it. I thought it was very tasteful.
Do you think that gets into the conversation around rights, though? Like, if something is done well and somebody should make that executive decision to understand what would serve this project the best, right? Like, which approach? That's not necessarily always in the hands of one person or like the best person for that task when we're talking producers and such, because I think that's why we end up with all these situations where, you know, everything is released 500 times and some of them are good, some of them are awful, and people are almost like easily swayed by just the argument of, oh, but it's so big, it's so well loved. Like if we're talking about the Harry Potter universe, right? You can do everything you want with it and spread it around because there's too many fans. So just based on fandom, you're thinking it should do well and not necessarily thinking of quality of, or has this been done before already, but just in a different way.
Well, that mentality is the exact reason why movie studios are constantly pumping out sequels.
Yeah.
They're not doing it for
and prequels and spin-offs.
Yeah, prequels and stuff. Because when you have a franchise and has a big name, like it'll sell. Like you release a Star Wars movie that's like made with like a Play-Doh, like claymation, like it's gonna get crazy views.
Exactly.
Well, I look at The Wheel of Time again by Robert Jordan. The Kate Redding, Michael Kramer books are there. They've been there since I think the books were actually being written, possibly. But then because Amazon did the new series, they had Rosamund Pike do the narration now because she's an awesome actress.
Great
it's
example.
Cool. It's absolutely good. And it's the same company. It's Macmillan Audio again still. It's the same company. So she's doing a very good job, in my opinion, of it. But it might not have worked out that way. Like it might have been a crappy narration by a really good actress in the TV series, but because Rosamund Pike is so amazing. Yeah, I like her. Did you know? It's working pretty well, I think, personally. But I didn't grow up on the other versions either. So.
Right. I think from the fandom, people generally have a big nostalgia factor for Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, just because that's what they grew up with. And to be fair, they did read like 14 books in the series. So there's a lot of hours of their voice that have just been bringing the bias to the fan base. You know, like I don't think Rosalind Pike I think she had a big uphill battle to fight to overtake those two.
Well, I like her. So there.
One more thing I wanted to mention that is often brought up as a complaint of multi-voice narrations. Let's be real. Sometimes one of the voices is a much better narrator than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there's two of them and I'm just like, I don't want to listen to narrator B. Like he's just not as good. He sounds goofy. Like the other one is just so much better. And it reminds me when I was listening to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, in one of those sections that I was telling you about, like the audio recording within the book, there was like a policeman character who was just a terrible actor, like out of nowhere. Which all the other ones were good, but I just started laughing. I couldn't take it seriously. And it's funny because everyone else was a great performer. It was just disappointing.
So I think we've all established that we're not necessarily diehard fans, or if not, just, you know, go into this with a very trusting, you're like, I'm gonna love this. I know that they'll do a great job at this. But we have pointed out good examples regardless of people who've done it well, production companies.
I don't run after full cast dramatized narrations, and I don't run after multi-narrations. But if something I know is really good and happens to be one of those things and it's done well, then I'll listen to it.
Yeah, it is quite nuanced. Like, we're not just saying, we know that graphic audio is good and they're popular. We know that Audible puts out incredible productions as well. But we're not necessarily saying because these are reputable production companies and distributors that we're hopping on the trend yet. I feel like we're a bit of a minority here, though.
Yeah, I think so too, because I did some digging just on forums and posts on Reddit and Facebook and stuff like that, just to see like where people sat when it came to multivoice narrations, and they're generally pretty popular. Like people really like it. I just find that when an individual narrator is taking over the entirety of the job of reading a book, you get attached to that specific voice. And even though there's not that clear distinction between multiple characters' voices, as much work as the narrators put in, I feel bad to say, but eventually the voice kind of disappears and it's really the words that matter.
But that's what the narrators often want.
Do you agree with that?
They totally want that. They want to not be them. They want the words
Yes.
to come alive for you. Right?
So if they're doing their job well, their voice kind of disappears. It's not about them, where when I think there's a multicast recording, that doesn't happen. You would just hear actors instead of hearing the words and the meaning behind the words.
Yeah, that's. I think that's one of the roots of my annoyance with it. I think. I think you've hit it. I think I couldn't articulate it before, but I think you've actually hit that, because when I'm reading a book, I want to listen to the flow of the language, right?
Which it makes me feel so bad to say that, because I know how much work narrators put in for them to disappear.
But it's
but they want that. A lot of
Yeah.
them say that.
They do,
absolutely
yeah.
they like, oh good, I'm not the center of this book. The words are the center of this
because
book.
at the end of it, it is an adaptation, right? It's an
Yeah,
adaptation of
that's
something
true.
that already exists. It's not
Everything
something
is.
that we're creating from scratch in this way. This is a trend, not necessarily a translation. Like I said, I don't want it to be, but it is another creative lens on a product that already exists, which was the written book.
Yeah.
Sarah, with that, I want to thank you so much for bringing this topic forward, because I think we all have strong opinions on this. Like Rem said, I think we're in the minority. Like, just because you like these, like, don't come after us.
No. I think we're just picky people.
We are picky. Yeah, we're all pretty picky.
As we should be.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Sarah.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're going to take a break and come back with Natasha Peters. She is our avid audiobook worm that is going to get put through the paces for rapid fire review. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's AMI Audiobook Review, the weekly podcast where we chat all things audiobooks. We're going to get to a chat with an audiobook worm shortly, but in the meantime, let's have a glance at the CELA homepage. These are the 3 featured titles that are up there at the Center for Equitable Library Access on their homepage right now. That's CELAlibrary.ca. The Mystery Guest, Molly the Maid No. 2 by Nita Pro's suspense and thriller title. Next one, Oath and Honor by Liz Cheney, politics and government biography. And the final one up there is The Billimaries by Jan Arden. And this is a gentle mysteries. Go back to that conversation we had about genres and subgenres and sub-subgenres, because then you might get a better idea of what a gentle mystery is if you already don't have one. Okay. Jacob and I are going to introduce our next guest, who is an avid audiobook listener / bookworm and a friend / connection of our contributor, Amir Khan. So shout out to Amir for always being, really good at associate producing. We appreciate it. Orientation and mobility instructor who works for VLRC. What does it stand for?
Vision Loss Rehab Canada.
Thank you, Natasha. There you go. Vision Loss Rehab Canada, which obviously I knew. Okay, I was just testing everybody. Natasha Peters is here. It's nice to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And since not everybody knows, what is an orientation and mobility instructor? What's the short version?
If you're losing your vision or you have no vision, I'm the one that comes in and teaches you how to get around safely and effectively with the use of a cane or without a cane.
Well, there you go. And if you are low vision or have no vision, you know what's really nice to have? Audiobooks.
Yes.
Yep.
Let's get to a rapid fire
Maybe
review.
maybe not while you're walking, but yes.
No,
good.
yeah, that's dangerous. Don't do that. You ever done that, Ramya?
No.
While you're walking around?
No.
Okay.
Have you?
It may have happened, yeah.
I heard that guilt in your laugh.
Yes.
Okay. So, are we priming our guest with rapid fire review? Of course we are. This is where we give... I've never had to explain this game.
Give it a go.
Oh, dear. Okay, so this is where we have asked you, the guest, for 5 titles, maybe 6. We'll get to that shortly. And we give you 15 seconds on the clock, hardcore, to describe this book to us or tell us why you love it or, whatever you want in 15 seconds to give us a sneak peek of the title. So, Natasha, have you prepared? Are you ready? Yeah?
I think so.
Okay.
All right. Here is the first book you gave us. Stone Barrington series by Stuart Woods.
Cozy thriller, cop turned high-priced lawyer, sexy gigolo type, James Bond.
Sexy gigolo type?
Was it good?
It's very good. He's always finding himself in trouble.
Oh, that's where we get you.
Yeah.
Okay. We have to go back to sexy gigolo type. Let's move to number 2. Clean Hands by Patrick Hoffman.
Fast-paced thriller, interconnecting stories, a lot of conspiracy theories, things you think the government is doing, but you're not really sure, and is corporate behind it. Very interesting. It makes you think a lot.
Oh, that was good.
Things you think that the government... Oh.
Okay.
It's like your first foot in the door to conspiracy theories.
That's right. That's right.
It's the start of the pipeline to the conspiracy theory world.
You don't know what's happening, but it is happening.
Also, you may not even realize you're a conspiracy theorist, and then you pick up the book and you're like, yes, I am.
That's right.
You don't see yourself change, eh? All right.
Interesting.
Next one, An Ocean Apart by Sarah Lee.
Immigrant story. So if you're a first generation anything, or mainly West Indian, this is a great story telling about, what your parents went through to get you where you are now. Very great for Black Month coming up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. I'm curious about that one too. Next one is Age of Vice by Depti Kapoor.
Too long. A lot of good characters, a lot of good stories, but not really going anywhere. It could have been cut by half.
Oh.
Wouldn't recommend.
Wow, I think that's the first time that's happened on this show.
Where somebody picked a rapid fire review for a book they did not
just to
enjoy.
trash it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Nice. I like that. We're not going to start adding
because
that.
it's on those bestseller lists, and I'm like, why?
Okay. It does feel better to trash a book that's being critically acclaimed, because then you're like, what's the big deal? I don't get it. All right. Next one is Fourth Wing from the Empyrean series by Rebecca Yarros.
So this is a new book that's come out. It's very popular. The great thing about this book, if you're into fantasy, are the dragons. Everything else, it's I would deem it more YA, but great dragon story if you're into that sci-fi stuff.
Okay. All right. What's cool about the dragon specifically?
Well, each dragon is tied to a rider, and they have a connection. And if that connection is broken, there are consequences. I'm not going to say.
Okay.
So, yeah. And it's school-based. So you've got that, academic, thriller. Some people like that, like academia, literature. Think Harry Potter, but more violent.
Oh.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, wait, now I want to read it.
Yeah, that actually sounds really cool.
More violent, because that's what Harry Potter was missing, right? So
yeah, if you like violence, that's the book for you.
Okay. If you like to read about violence.
Yes.
Let's be clear about this.
Let's
definitely be clear about that.
Okay.
This book is for violent individuals.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I know why we picked 6 books, because one of them you wanted to trash, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the last one for Rapid Fire Review with Natasha. No Crystal Stare, a documentary novel of life and work of Louis Michaud, Harlem bookseller by Von de Michaud Nelson.
This book is for book lovers. This is a story about a man who came from modest beginnings and felt that reading is important and wanted to put reading into the hands of those of minorities.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a black bookseller, and he was very influential in people like Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali. Very great read. Listen, it's a short one. I was able to finish it in a day.
So there's kind of the biographical about this, but obviously the, expansion of literature and class and all this other stuff that comes up, I'm sure, which sounds very, very interesting. Which one of these books do you want to expand on?
I'll say the last one.
Okay.
Just simply because as we're going into February, which is Black History Month, people try to steer their reading focus to more Black authors or people of color authors. And I think this is a really important one because it tells the story of why this man thought reading was important, and especially for people of color. When he opened his bookstore, this isn't really a spoiler, the bank manager wouldn't give him a loan because he said Black people don't read. And, yeah. And that's a powerful statement. And at the time, other people were saying that to him too. And that's why he thought it was very important to open this bookstore, to expand people's horizon. And it just showed how he had people coming into his bookstore and he would give away books just so people would get that bug of and the desire that we have of reading. So it's a great listen. It's very easy to follow along and it's enjoyable. I know not a lot of people are into nonfiction, and I would say I'll read one nonfiction, a year. I like more of a story when I'm hearing a long fiction as opposed to I did this, I did that.
Yeah.
Right. And so this gives you a story from his beginning to the end of his life.
And it's not written by him.
No.
So I'm always curious about when, biographies are written about people does it really capture his intention?
I feel it does. I feel it does. Because like I said, his intention was to expand the reading of everyone, but especially of people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time when he opened his bookstores, which was in like the 40s, I think, 40s or 50s.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the conversations around that time in the 40s, compared to the conversations we now have about literacy, and even the approaches are obviously so vastly different, Natasha. Like opening a bookstore and then saying like, colored people need to read, come pick up your books here, I guess is a very direct way of messaging. But also it's like, who's teaching who how to read? Where are the gaps being closed?
Yeah.
Did they get into details about that?
No, I think it was more of economics. Like, most people of color at the time, they were just trying to survive. And reading is a luxury, to be able to sit down and to take the time to read a book and enjoy it isn't something that everyone, especially at that time, had the luxury of doing. But, just opening their eyes to, hey, it doesn't have to be a long book. You don't have to finish it very quickly. If you can't afford to buy a book at my bookstore, you can always go to the library, get a library card. So, but if you're interested in, your history and as a people of where you come from and what is happening to us as a people and why we're being oppressed, it's good to go to a Black bookstore and find that out. And that's what he offered.
And I'm sure there was a lot of pushback even from the community around that.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's the socioeconomic and then there's the shaming of being literate or illiterate, I guess, as well.
The shaming.
Like, where you're not necessarily... People may have looked down upon you for reading, for wanting to be informed, for wanting to educate not just yourself, but push the message of education around you. Because at that time, it's like that's not even priority for most of us.
Just goes to show how much.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it just goes to show how much that was a bold move to open a bookstore that place and that time. And if you're interested in that book, that's No Crystal Scare, a documentary novel of life and work of Louis Michaud, Harlem bookseller by Vanda Michaud Nelson.
So we're curious about your audiobook listening, Natasha. Do you listen to a lot of audiobooks versus reading physical books?
I am exclusive audiobook listener.
Oh, exclusive.
Okay.
Exclusive.
Was this a decision you made? Like, what happened?
My job. When I started working as an O&M, I'm walking around with canes all day, and I was walking around with heavy books, which had an effect on me physically on my shoulder and things like that. So I needed a way to, still be able to read. And I was worried at first, I'm going to fall asleep. I don't know if this is for me.
Right.
But then I was listening to podcasts and I was thinking, well, I don't fall asleep listening to a podcast. Why would I think it would be any different with a book? So I started with one and then it went from there.
And now you only read audiobooks. So let's get kind of into it. Do you have any feelings, partiality between full cast narrators or multi-narration versus just like straight plain read?
I like a multi-class narration, but I'm okay with just a read. But, when the narrators make it interesting, sort of like a movie, it makes it better.
Like
it
the audio dramas and such?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, you enjoy it?
Makes it more, makes a more interesting and fun experience. And, when they have the accents and everything like that, that's always fun. I'm always happy when they get the Caribbean accents correct. Because that's
representation.
Yeah, exactly. So that's always great.
Yeah.
Right. It is impressive when an individual narrator can make a book cinematic, because I know exactly what you mean. It's when a book is well performed, it really does seem cinematic. Although that is a little easier to achieve when it's a cast narration.
Yes.
It feels more like an audio drama, like a fully produced thing. I have another question for you. Do you have any pet peeves when it comes to audiobooks? Anything about them?
Not really. I've had good experiences with them. Sometimes there's glitches, but for the most part, I wouldn't say I have any pet peeves. Unless they're not available. That's, I've been trying to get Trevor Noah from, the library forever, but they don't have the audio version because I refuse to buy audio. Yes.
They don't have the audio version.
That's a crazy popular book, too.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
That's inexcusable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think Audible wants you to buy it, but if you don't want to buy it, then I don't know, but I haven't been able to get it. So that's frustrating about audiobooks, not getting the titles that you really want to read.
It's true. Sometimes you really have to hunt them down. Because you get it from Libby or Audible or Sela. You have so many places to get them. And sometimes you're like, but this platform has it with this narrator, and I don't want that narrator. I want this other one. And then you have to do some research to get the version that you actually want. I had something happen to me recently where I was listening to a book, and when I went back to it, it skipped 4 hours ahead.
No.
And I was so confused, and I was like, wait, something's wrong.
Did you realize?
It took me 20 minutes to find the spot that I was at. I was so mad.
Oh, that's the worst.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of us have talked about just the transition. Sorry, Sela, I love you. But there were transitional periods where they were kind of upgrading platforms, and with Dolphin Easy Reader, which is, if you don't want to pay for an app, you can use Easy Reader to get on the Sela catalog. Anyway, there was a couple months where it was an absolute nightmare trying to get your book to sync on your device. And so with Addie LaRue, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which I shout out that book all the time, which is a very long book, by the way. Do you remember how long it was?
It was
Jacob?
17 hours.
17 hours. And in the middle of a read, it would just jump you back to the beginning. And this happened to me 5 times. And maybe that's why I love the book so much, because I've had to actually work.
It's a sunk cost fallacy thing.
Yeah. It's like, I can't. I have to love this book now. I had to restart it like 5 times. You know, it was pretty brutal. But yeah, these kind of things do target your reading experience, Natasha.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure.
What do you think of speeding up books?
Oh, love it.
Okay. Team speed up. Okay. How much?
Yes.
How much?
I can either do 2.5 or 3.
What?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, you can't.
Pause. On Audible? Like, are you?
No, I'm on Libby.
Okay.
I'm mainly on Libby. Yeah.
2.5 or 3. Now, do you remember the book when you finish?
Most of the time, if it's memorable. Sometimes I have to go back. Like, what was this one about? But you know what?
Oh my.
If the narrator has an accent and it's a heavy accent, like a Scottish accent or an Irish accent that I'm not too familiar with, I will slow it down to a 2. And then if at night, if I want to doze off, I'll do 1.5.
1.5 for dozing?
Dozing.
I'm shocked.
Yeah, that's stunning. That's by far the fastest I've ever heard someone read an audiobook. I didn't even know it went up to 3.
I'd take a lot of hits for speeding up my books, Natasha, but never have I ever.
Yeah.
2.5.
I just find it, like for Libby, that's okay for me. My husband's like, what is that you're listening to? And I'm like, oh, my book.
Yeah, this is like, rivaling like Screen Reader at 100. What? Wow. Okay.
So I go through a lot of books. I do go through a lot of books.
But I was having this convo with my brother about binge culture, okay? Now hear me out. Because it's the yes, because you're watching TV shows, like a season of a TV show will come out, right? The Bear. Season 2 comes out. We just absolutely run through it in a night. All 10 episodes or 12 episodes or whatever. And then the next day, next week, we're like, what happened? Oh, I got to rewatch that season. I know I loved it, but I can't retain it. And that's kind of the way that I parallel speed reading.
Well, if you enjoyed
sometimes I do feel that, yeah.
Yeah, if you enjoyed it during the time that you were watching it, isn't that all that matters? Like, is it important to retain? Like, do you value retaining it?
Well,
you're not studying it for a test.
Okay, that's fair. But then what happens when season 3 comes out? Now you got to go watch season 1 and 2 again because you can't remember why you loved the show and who the characters are.
You go and watch a recap video on
it
YouTube.
Depends.
No.
It depends on how long it is between the series, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but if you can't remember your book the next week, should we be questioning that a little?
Maybe. I see where you're coming from. Yeah. But then it says to me it wasn't that great of a read. And it was just for entertainment.
I don't know. I think we got to do a test study on this.
Test our reading comprehension?
No, like retention.
Oh.
No, not reading comprehension. Come on. This is going to be a very
just think about
problematic
it.
podcast.
I think you retain what you like about the book, right? And the feeling that the book gave you, not
feeling,
so much
yes.
Yeah,
that's totally fair.
You remember what it left you, how it left you feeling, right? So this book was so depressing. But like that's all you remember from it.
I don't even want to remember it.
Yeah, I don't even want to remember it. It was just
exactly.
dramatic. Or this book was so funny. And then you're like, okay, tell me one section of it that you thought was funny and you can't name a single one.
But I can't wait for the next one to come out with this author.
Exactly.
Oh my. Natasha, awesome speaking with you.
Oh, it was great speaking with you guys.
Yeah.
I love talking books.
Yeah, exactly. And we love talking books with people as well. Also, thanks for putting us on a new version of Rapid Fire Review where you bring an extra book that you disliked. You can trash it in 15 seconds.
You're welcome.
All right. Take care. We'll chat with you again soon.
Okay, thanks. Thanks again.
We're speaking with Natasha Peters, our audiobook worm for this week. Exclusive audiobook worm. I love hearing that from people. Like, I don't even pick up books anymore unless they're audio. Wow. Next episode, we're going to be talking about hunting for our next read, seeking out, receiving, giving personal recommendations. You think it's an art, huh, Jacob?
I think it is an art. Yeah, I think there's so much to it. If, like, tell me right now that you take every single recommendation that's given to you seriously.
Nah.
Exactly.
Nah.
What is it that makes a good book recommendation?
Exactly.
I've heard people recommend me books, and I just went, nah.
Also, like, sometimes it's not even a direct recommendation. Like, a guy on TikTok will present a book so well. I'm like, I'm picking it up now. This literally happened to me over the holidays. Yeah.
No, there's an art, and I think being a bookworm, a huge part of that is looking for your next read, and that involves a ton of searching and book recommendations and whatnot. So
all right,
I think there's a lot to this. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah. So we do have a question for the book club as well that we're posing along these lines. How do you personally decide to take book recommendations seriously? You can also call us and email us your feedback about the show or about the specific question, 1-866-509-4545, feedback@ami.ca. That's it. That's it for us this week.
That's it.
Yeah, we'll be back next week because we are a weekly podcast. I'm your host, Ramya Amadin, with co-host and producer Jacob Szymanski, technical producer Nisreen Abdelmajid. And until next time, happy audiobook listening.